Hey, welcome back to another Montreal Canadian Notebook with hockey coach Trenches directly for the beautiful, great talent today on a great Thursday night, April 17, 2025. I was going to say play by play. That's one day I'm doing the last 10 days. Follow the Columbus Blue Jacket and Montreal Canadiens. But tonight we're going to talk about the review of the Montreal Canadiens of the season 2024-2025. And we're going to talk about the preview of the NHL playoff. And we're going to talk about everything going on around the NHL. And that's going to talk about this, hopefully, an amazing, great day. And of course, the subject of the night, you see that yesterday. Montreal can get the ticket, clinch the playoff spot number 8 on the Eastern Conference, and Montreal can return on the playoff since 2028 for Montreal. Yes, in 2021, but it was not exactly the same way. But that's what happening. Don't forget, tomorrow night we're going to do the game, Laval Rocket against the Belleville. And then Saturday, the first game of the playoff and the Western Conference, we're going to do the bowl game play by play. So join us live at 6 o'clock p.m. and then at 8:30 p.m. And honestly, guys, yeah, many games in NHL tonight. I did not look anything because Montreal is in. I'm just focusing on the Montreal Canadiens. So that's happening. And tonight, we have a really big news for everybody. And he is back in the house. We miss him in the last 3, 4 months. And I'm really happy to see him back with us. And of course, we have the regulars directly from Hawkesbury. Of course, he is with us tonight. I'm talking about Marco Rabi, and Frank is back in the house tonight.
Frank
Ahoy!
back in the house. So happy to
It's
have
good to be
Frank back
back.
in the house, man. Welcome, sir. How are you?
Very well, very well. Thanks for indulging my slight departure from the program, but glad to be back, boys.
Awesome to
Very
see you
happy
with
to have
us
you back.
tonight. I'm sorry, Marco, but I'm sure you still follow up what's going on with NHL and Montreal Canadiens. Frank, I'm sure you did not lose everything, so you know you're going to bring us a lot of great knowledge about what happening with the Montreal Canadiens the last couple of weeks. And Marco, and the last couple of days, I think the last time I see you is like 7, I think maybe 9 days before that.
Yeah.
And you came back after the game for the the post game, but it was a really excited week overall for the Montreal Canadiens. We thought he's going to clinch this. If you remember last Tuesday, not 2 days ago, but last one, they beat the Detroit Red Wings, which considered that the huge big win for the Montreal Canadiens. I think at that moment they have 8 points from the Columbus Blue Jacket. We have to wait until game number 82 and to clinch the spot in the playoff for 2025 in NHL. So, Marco, overall, you have a great week.
Yeah, coach, and I keep hearing that narrative around, right? Like, oh, Montreal, they were, like kind of slipping or choking along the way, but they did go 7-1-2 in their last 10 games, right? So it's still pretty damn good record, like obviously they went 1-2 in games where they could clinch, right? But overall, if you look at just the last 10 games, it's pretty clutch kind of stretch run for Montreal to come in and really grab that last spot. It seemed like nobody really wanted that last spot. So Montreal's most happy to get their stuff together, get their shit together, to be honest, and just kind of take it. So I wouldn't be too critical of the fact that it took 3 games to clinch, because again, you look at their record, 7-1-2. Obviously the Chicago game was exciting, but we'll get into all that, right? But at the end of the day, coach, the good news is we no longer have to watch the boring New York Islanders and watch those games. I did like watching the Columbus games. Like, they're an exciting team to watch. But I know Enertap is a big Islanders fan, but man, if you're looking for a good team to kind of like take a little nap there, a little siesta in the evening after dinner, then the Islanders is definitely the team to watch for sure.
Yeah,
So very excited.
Columbus winning 5-0 right now against the Islanders
Wow.
at that moment. So,
Yeah. Hats off to
if
the Columbus Blue Jackets. They had a really nice Really, really nice run.
6 straight win, I believe, about that. But Marco, when you said about 7-1-2, Montreal is 15-5-6 at Sunday return. So, and
Yeah, yeah.
it looked like they not played that kind of hockey at that level. Like I see like a roller coaster. We have a good strike. I think at some point was 6-1-1, and it was really good. Like they played, they beat a big team. But after that, then the last Detroit, the last two game as only weekend, and then before that they won a couple of games, but it was not like I think they had what 15 straight games. They now lead after 20 minutes, and
Oh yeah,
you
yeah.
know,
It's not
so
to say they've been playing perfect hockey. Like they haven't been playing perfect hockey. Like yeah, I don't know if we'll get into it, but like if you look at Sam Montembeault's numbers since the Four Nations break, his goals saved above is I think seventh overall in the NHL. So Sam Montembeault, say what you want. We know that some people don't think he's the number one goalie. Over 60 games this season, you know, um, ultimately he's right up there. Everybody's with good reason. Everybody talks about Suzuki and Hudson as probably the main MVPs for the Montreal Canadiens. But you have to give credit to Sam Montembeault because he really, really probably played more, like for sure played more than he's ever played in his career. And if you look at those numbers, there's a lot of those games coach that Montreal maybe shouldn't have gotten points out of, and Montreal, that was the key. Like I said, 7-1-2, and it was disappointing to lose in overtime to Chicago and to Toronto. But without those 2 points in regular and just a regulation loss, Montreal wouldn't have clinched. So all the points, you're like a little Pac-Man, right? You're just num num num. You just take all the points wherever you can get them. So very, very good stuff.
I mean, at the start of the season, if
This
premature
early.
queuing.
This early. Yeah.
Montreal claims the spot of the playoff, but Alex Ovechkin is 44 goal tonight. Is approximately what 3 goals for 900.
He was at 85, right? Wasn't the record
He scored 1 or 2 goals after
790?
that. It may be long at about this at 897.
890, yeah, it's probably at 897, yeah.
Yeah. So sorry about that, Frank, to cut you about this for
That's
that. But
okay. Well, we can crash my interventions anytime. No, I was just gonna say, like, we're talking about, how it sort of seems like they stumbled at the very end to get into the playoffs, but if at the start of the season, and I'll take a page out of Benoit Brunet's book on this, he did say something to that effect at some recent interview, but if at the start of the season we were to say the Montreal Canadiens could clinch a playoff spot on the very last game of the season, every single Habs fan would have been elated. This is what happened. Doesn't matter if they dropped 3 or 4 before they got it done, and they're playing meaningful hockey during the playoffs. When no one talked about the playoffs confidently, everyone was, we'll try to squeeze, be in the mix. They're in the playoffs, so this is, doesn't matter if you get in by a big margin or a small margin, you got in.
yeah, I'm sorry about that. We're going to start with the NHL, guys. I have about like 6 questions about NHL. Just want to clarify this. Panarin with the Madison Square Garden sexual assault from Panarin was closely private until it was announced today by the Athletic site, website, where it was some kind of with an employee of the New York Rangers. It's happening, and look like a settlement settled out of the court, and this is over. She's not working with anymore with that, but surprisingly to see that about Panarin in the NHL. It's just me was the first time I heard about that, so I don't know both of you heard
Yeah.
about this or Marco. What do
No,
you
but
think?
yeah, so I think this happened last season, and
Yeah,
I guess the Rangers, that's the whole point of settling out of court is that you sign non-disclosure agreements and you make it go away. That's the main reason. We saw that with Hockey Canada and all of that controversy. Like you try to make it go away. Obviously, like when you're dealing with a case like this, I think everybody understands that everybody has a right to due process. So when it comes to Panarin, obviously it doesn't look good. Whenever you settle out of court and there's non-disclosure agreements, automatically people will start thinking the worst as to kind of what happened here. But we have to be, kind of respectful and understand that we don't have all the information. It's a terrible situation if true. So listen, just it's never something you want to see. Unfortunately, something we see pop up in hockey a little bit more frequently than we would like, right? So not a good story. Is this another reason why, the Rangers, like there's all kinds of like crazy things in the background happening with the Rangers. We've heard Chris Drury's like very, very strict with his players and his staff about who can talk to the media. Remember, Lafrenière wasn't allowed to talk to French media. Like it was lots of rules. Like it's a very strict environment that Chris Drury runs when it comes to talking to the media. So maybe this is a reason why, right? Like, so there's a lot of things happening in New York. We know that there was a lot going on behind the scenes here, starting with Chris Drury. So just another chapter to the ongoing saga, which is the New York Rangers. So hopefully the young woman is doing well. But again, coach, like we don't have all the information. So, respect Panarin, in terms of not having his day in court or his opportunity to really address what he did. So it's just one of those things that will just be a question mark, and we'll have to live with that.
All right. I want to talk about this. Frank, you gave us a bit more information. Dallas Star yesterday, they lost Jason Robinson injury. Put this with Eskinen. Look like he's not going to be playing on the first round. How do you see the Dallas Star now for the playoff against the Colorado Avalanche? Frank.
Yeah, I dropped the question a little bit there. It froze a little bit on my end, but yeah, I just have one question. Why was Jason Robertson playing? It really comes down to that. When you're clinched, when you're your last game or penultimate game of the season, I think it's fair to rest your stars to avoid situations like these, especially knowing that guys like Heiskanen, like you said, are not going to be there. You're already sort of stretched thin. They still have a fantastic team. They still have tons of big guns in their roster, but this gotta hurt. I don't know what's the extent of the injury. I don't know how quickly he can come back from that. I don't have that info, but if it's if he misses more than 2 or 3 games, it's a disaster for a round one playoff series against a top team. Arguably the series that has two of the top teams. It could be a Western Conference matchup right there and then, right? So it's tough. It's tough. I have to question the logic of throwing in there in a game where you gain nothing from getting those 2 points. It's not the best move, and I don't know if there's a lesson to be learned right there and then from the coaching staff, because that's if I'm a Stars fan right now, I would be irate. I would be completely losing my mind.
Did you hear what Peter DeBoer? Did you hear what DeBoer said though? After he was, I don't think he really wanted to dress Robertson, because he's like, well, if we wouldn't have dressed him, maybe this wouldn't have happened. Like, so I think maybe it was a cap situation, but you could tell by DeBoer's comments that he wasn't super happy, and he was referencing other teams that did rest some of their veterans. So yeah, not a great situation in Dallas.
I want to talk about the crazy stat, and I want from both of you, because you know how KBT on that. Why happening? If I'm talking about Vegas and Montreal, do you have something come to your mind? A stat in the NHL.
Okay, let me see.
Frank?
So a stat that Frank, or sorry, that
No, but I
that
just said
is,
I was just asking Frank, like, you know something with Marco? I just said that this way.
Oh, actually, I think I know where you're going with this. I think I saw something to that effect. So I don't know about the Montreal part, but I think I know about the Vegas part. So tell me
Go
about
ahead.
the Montreal part. Does it have to do with the officials wearing stripes?
With the what?
Does it have anything to do with officials and referees, people who wear stripes?
Yes and no. Marco?
Didn't I read something along the lines of the least penalized team in league history for one season?
So I would tell you what's going on about that. The Vegas Golden Knights are the lowest penalty minor in NHL this season. The Montreal are the highest one. Marco, the difference between both number from lowest to the highest, how many penalty Montreal have to do on PK versus Vegas? And that's fun between
So how many minor penalties? I'll say 40, 40 minor
40.
penalties.
Frank,
Yeah, I'm gonna go higher. I'm gonna go 100.
88.
Whoa.
Wow.
Whoa.
So
Holy shit.
88 minute, 88 minor. It's about what 76.
Yeah.
It's about
Yeah.
3 game. A penalty. Montreal play more at Vegas on the shot and dirt versus that. Now, Frank, what is unique about the Vegas about that? You have something else you can add on this?
Well, it feels I haven't watched a lot of them this year, but it feels like not too long ago they were a bit of the pet project of the league owner. So I'm not gonna go too deep into that, but maybe there is some leniency there. I don't know. But what I will say about the Habs is they're still a very, very young team. I do believe they're one of the youngest team in the league this year again. It's probably part of the learning curve, right? You're cheating a little bit. You're trying to force plays a little bit. You're not knowing when to let go and try to force things a little bit more. So to the Montreal side of things, I can totally anticipate it has to do with age and maturity. But for Vegas, is it because of age? Is it because it's one of the oldest team in the league? I don't know. I don't think so.
Can I advance two potential theories? So
Go
I
ahead.
think you're onto something there. Like Vegas has a pretty like a pretty experienced decor, right? So Montreal's decor is pretty young, as you're saying, right? But I would advance another thing too. I'm pretty sure Vegas doesn't play the hybrid. I don't want to jump into all like that debate, but I'm pretty sure they play a zone, right? So
No,
if you're Montreal, you
no,
spend they don't play zone. What do they play, coach?
no. It's a mix of it's a mix between an hybrid and the D zone. So when he won the
Okay.
Stanley Cup, they was considered, they check all the that stat in the last 15 years. And Vegas was one was a mix between both of them. So they
Okay, so
use
they play a
hybrid
hybrid.
sometime when you go up and then they come back down, but
Okay.
not like you said usually.
Yeah. Okay. So if they're not playing man on man, like to me, that's one of the risks of man on man, right? Like you lose your guy, and then you don't have a choice. You have to kind of hold or you have to hook because you're being beat one on one. So Vegas maybe is more experienced at playing that hybrid, more experienced guys in the D zone. That would be my theory because to me, that's where most of the minor penalties come from Montreal is around that.
So the last thing about this, guys, the Vegas Golden Knights are the lowest team get penalty in the last 4 seasons in the NHL. That's
Hmm.
crazy if you think about it. Not only one, two, four. That's
Yeah.
blew my mind to see that about that. Now I'm going to give you another stat, and I want to both of you tell me maybe the reason behind that. Let's go at the NHL draft. Well, this season they have I think it's next Thursday, if I can call it the NHL draft. Anyhow, they trade zero all the team the first round pick. And right now in the NHL, in the next 2 months, when you have the draft, already 11 team draft, they already trade the first round pick. Any reason behind that? Why we go that direction or not?
Well, to me, that's always a signal that teams are not seeing the same quality necessarily in this particular pool of players available, right? So that's one thing. I think that's something that's been quite known. I think there you already saw last year that some teams were trading for 20 like for next year's draft picks instead of this year because it's pretty well established that the depth of this particular crop of young players is not as deep as the ones that we're going to see in the future. So there's that. But then, there's also just kind of I'll call it the Julien Brisebois, kind of philosophy on first round picks, right? That, and I used to have a table, like Brian Wild from Global used to publish this all the time. There's like a table of what the percentages of a player making the NHL based on where they get picked. And if I'm not mistaken, when you're getting into after the 15th pick, like you're into 15% chance of like making the NHL, playing more than 150 games in the NHL. So I think the thinking is evolving from certain teams of, you're going to have certain teams that are just gobbling up assets when they're rebuilding, right? But there's certain teams that are, if they think they're in their window and they can flip those picks for something that can help them right away, then I think the sacredness of a first round pick is starting to, some teams are starting to question that a little bit. So that would be my
Good
my
point about
theory.
good point, Marco. Frank, before you answer, or I'll give you two things that you can tell me. Maybe that's the reason. But first of all, the football is 53 roster and the NHL is 23, right? But the second thing is it's a league of copycat. How many times we hear that? And is it possible for you, Frank, because Vegas win with more by the trade, not by the NHL draft, and also the Florida Panthers did it also where they trade many players and they build that kind of a good team in NHL. Is it possible now the NHL does not consider important to draft maybe after 16 or 20 and they trade all those NHL draft?
Yeah, I think that's a very, it's very similar to what Marco just said, right? It's that sort of logic that past a certain point in the draft, like 15, let's say, you're pretty much throwing a dart a little bit more. The chances are of getting good players are lower, and also as the copycat league is very valid. Whether you call it the Vegas effect or the Julien Brisebois effect, like you see teams like, for example, I believe it was Edmonton who traded this year's first last year at the draft for a player they really wanted last year. So they're not too worried about, pick 26 or 30 or whatever next year or the year after that. It doesn't really matter at this point. They're trying to get guys that are going to come in sooner than later to help a core that is in the win now window. So I agree. I think it has to do probably with the fact that it's better to have a solid roster right now if you're not rebuilding and not worry too much about late picks and whenever they may become 5, 6 years down the road.
All right, sound good, both of you. Finally, we're going to last NHL before we jump on Montreal Canadiens for the next 90 minutes. For the people in the chat also can participate. Um, you have a lot up in Clem this off season for different team. I want one of you, both of you, select one or two team you're really looking for something could have been during summer. But Nashville, really bad year this year, 68 points. Buffalo for the 14 years did not make the playoff. Islanders finally are out. Detroit, the Isa plan is not working the last 8 years. Boston Bruins, is it possible they retool, they go to a rebuild? We'll see. Vancouver Canucks, the drama with the Rangers inside the locker room. And then the Pittsburgh Penguins is where we'll see what Dubas is going to do with Crosby, Malkin, Letang, and everything, and the money they have and the contract of Carlson. So, what I would like to both of you and people in the chat, you can pick one team, not the same after that. We'll start with Frank about this and what you feel about could be that team. You're going to have a lot of chance. We expect many things could happen to the team from the DG for the during the off summer.
Well, the first one that comes to mind is the New York Islanders. In my opinion, they're destined for mediocrity. They're sort of in the middle of the pack. They have been for quite some time now, and there's not much in the pipeline, right? So they're sort of the no man's land area. They do have an incredible goaltender that probably inflates a little bit more where they are right now than where they should be. So honestly, I don't know if the fan base is ready for it. I don't know if ownership has the balls to do it. But in my opinion, this is a team that should probably be looking at blowing it up, at least partially, if not fully, to get some influx of youth and talent to bring a roster that can be built for success sustainable success for the long run, because right now they're not heading there. They're aging veterans are just gonna start to fade a little bit. They don't, like I said, they don't have much. They did grab Calvin Ritchie in a trade at the deadline, which is a great piece to build upon. But apart from that, there's not much to like in their prospect pool, I believe. So yeah,
Iserman.
if I'm the Islander, yeah, Iserman, yeah, but he's more like a complementary, same as Richie. They're more like complementary guys than building blocks, let's say. So there's
Yeah.
no like blue chip building block there, and they're in the middle of a pack, and I don't see a way up next year if they don't make significant trades. So if I'm the Islanders, that's probably what I would contemplate as ownership. And I don't believe that's through Lou Lamoriello and Patrick Roy that this is going to happen. So we're looking at, full cleaning of the front house, as well as a fire sale a little bit. And by the way, if this happens, if I'm Kent Hughes, I am first one in line to call. I want to know if Dobson is in play. I want to know if Barzal is in play. I want to know if perhaps I know we talked about this earlier, Marco, but if Horvat is in play, that could be an interesting piece as well. If Sorokin's in play, heck, I wouldn't mind. If we're looking at an upgrade on Montembeault, not that I don't like Montembeault, but if you're
Wow.
staring
Jeez.
down a situation where you could get
Yeah.
Sorokin,
Jeez,
I'd
yeah.
consider that.
Absolutely.
So I would be interested to see what the Islanders do. The other team, real quick, that I'm looking at is Nashville, and hate to be this guy, but I think I don't think Trotz is the man here. I was a little scratching my head a little bit last year when I saw all the heavy contracts he handed to very aging players in Marchessault and Stamkos, and we see that it didn't work. And then what does he do? He trades his blue chip goaltender prospect for not much, and then he trades Carrier for Justin Barron, and that was
Fabro. They traded
a
Fabro to Columbus. He goes to Columbus. He plays top pairing minutes, like just crazy.
exactly.
Yeah.
So it looks like me like Barry Trotz was a heck of a coach, but I don't know that he has the chops to be a GM, unfortunately. So if I'm Nashville, I would try to cut my losses as soon as possible and try to right the ship. And I don't know that he's the man to do it.
It's an interesting question, Coach. Like, I look at this list and I kind of separate out teams that are already committed. Like, Buffalo and Detroit, to me, I separate those out from these other teams because they are kind of, we can debate, we can have a whole week series on what the hell went wrong with the rebuild with those teams. What I would look for, guys, I find this really fascinating, is in the last year, you've heard of, I've been hearing in a lot of different, kind of like streams that I've watched, podcasts, interviews that I've seen, where there's kind of like this talk where some executives and ownership in some of these teams or across the NHL, they're starting to reevaluate the the benefit of doing these tear down rebuilds like Chicago and San Jose is doing, and just re-examining it because you were saying about a copycat league, Coach. So looking at kind of what Washington did last year, instead of completely tearing it down, I think we, depending on how Washington does here, you might see some teams like Boston, maybe the Islanders, maybe Vancouver, like those teams that still have some core pieces, really hesitate to just go the full tear down and rebuild model, because you look at teams like Buffalo and Detroit, like you're seeing a rare, and again, like we're all excited in Montreal here that made the playoffs, but I don't want to freak anybody out, but if you start adding a whole bunch of new young players next year, it's not impossible that Montreal would regress next year, right? Like, it's not a linear line, rebuild, right? So really exciting progress. Montreal, even though they're the youngest team, there's still a lot of veterans on the team, like Gallagher, Anderson, like all those players, right? So if you just replace those players with a bunch of young players, so all I'm saying is rebuild can kind of be like this, right? Up and down. So I guess that's the trend I'm going to be looking for, Coach, with these teams that have to kind of make a decision of what they're going to do. Are they going to, like Boston, it looks like they showed their cards a little bit, right? Like they started selling off a lot of pieces at the deadline. So how far are they going to go? Like, because you still have some core pieces there. So I'll be following that trend this summer to see which teams decide to kind of, maybe Montreal is a good model, right? Like I've said this a bunch of times, and we had that debate on the show here, Coach, a lot, which is I don't think like people say, oh, Montreal made the playoffs only 3 years into their rebuild. I don't believe Montreal was a full tear down rebuild like Chicago. Like, don't forget what Kent Hughes already had. You already had Suzuki, you already had Caulfield, you already had Guhle, and you already had like some assets, right? So it's not like Chicago where they really stripped it down to the studs. So maybe Montreal, that becomes a model too in a copycat league where, hey, like let's not tear everything down because you never know when you're going to be back. You could be easily become the Buffalo Sabres or the Detroit Red Wings.
That is great comments. That's I appreciate that. Don't forget, please, to click on that if you don't mind. That'd be great. Montreal Canadiens send Joshua Roy return to Laval Rocket. I think that's a great decision about that. With Kapanen and Demidov now around the team, and you have also Michael Pesada. So if they need something, what happened upon this? So that's a good. And then Joshua Roy didn't play for about 5-6 games, maybe more. And I think they will be helping the Laval Rocket. Last yesterday, but the score 2-1 was the first loss of Jacob Fowler yesterday. But we'll see what's happening. So we're going to move on quicker, guys. We don't have to add anything about this. Montreal Canadiens win yesterday 4-2 against the Carolina Hurricane. So we have to give credit for all the players did it yesterday. And I want to talk a little bit more about the recap game for both of you. And I'll give you a little bit the inside what happening. 4-2 for Montreal in the playoff for Montreal. Cody had 2 goals. Milestone and NH for the Montreal player. Suzuki 89 points. Hudson 60 assists, 66 points. Montembeau 62 games this season. 31 goals. 31 wins for Montembeau. Ab playoffs since 2017. Ab 90 points plus and 40 wins since season 2018-2019. Good game. Sakaski and Jake Evans. And by the way, guys, they did not make the playoff at 2018 and 2019 when they win. And I think they got 96 points. Did not make it. I don't know how, but it is what it is. So give us a bit an overview of the game, Frank. What you saw, and go from there after that, Marco.
Well, first things first, I think we have to acknowledge that this wasn't the Carolina Hurricanes A team. There was a lot of rookies in there that probably played a little bit into the results. So we're going to thank them. We're going to give a firm handshake to Rod Brandamore and his management team for giving us a little shot there. Very well appreciated. That said, Kaiden Guhle played a fantastic game yesterday with 50% of his production in one night.
Yeah.
So we'll take it. But go ahead, Marco.
No, I was going to say we'll definitely take that. We'll definitely take that.
For sure. And, as much as I've been the first to say, like, I don't see a lot of offense coming from Guhle. I don't expect that he will be an offensive driver in this team. But we saw yesterday 2 great shots, not deflections, not like flukes. They were lasers that were placed exactly where it went in. So maybe there's a little bit more offense than I care to admit, I'll be honest. So that's exciting, right? So we always talked about the Shea Weber comparison, and to me, it was always lacking that offensive shot threat. But maybe there's that layer that could be worked on and could come in at some point. So I have my reserves, but with what I saw yesterday, I may be a little bit more inclined to believe there could be a little bit more offense from Guhle's stick. So very, very excited about that. Some key players you mentioned here, Coach, in the bottom lines, I see Slav and Evans, but I want to add Heineman to that list. I think he had a fantastic game yesterday. I think he played probably one of his best games since he came back. Was extremely strong and solid, and always played the right way. Like made the right moves at every single instance that he had the puck or was chasing it. I thought he played a fantastic game. And when we get into playoffs, you'll know, like we can all remember how was it Armia, Perry, and Stahl line in the 2021 finals run? They were the difference maker. They were a line that Winnipeg had no answer for, that were just a force to be reckoned with. So, if Heineman,
They spent so much time in
Exactly.
the offensive zone. It's crazy. Yeah.
Exactly. So guys like Heineman in the playoffs can be huge difference makers. They might not score 15 goals in the playoff run, but they will score two or three that are key or crucial, and they could also play a game that prevents the other team from scoring by spending so much time on the boards, down low, etc. Just like this line played. So we still have Armia. It remains to be seen if he can be as effective because he looks still pretty banged up. I don't know what's up with that, but this is the kind of guy that could be really a difference maker. Same for Slavkovsky, right? So these big body guys who can be, a very different animal to contain when it comes to playoff. I'm absolutely thrilled and excited to see if Slav can carry his game from yesterday into the playoffs and play that similar style of play. That's going to be quite the handful for the Washington Capitals.
Mhm. Yeah, if we're just looking at the game itself yesterday, it was tense, right? Like you could even through just the TV, and I had a couple colleagues that were at the Bell Center for the game, and they go to games all the time because they have corporate seats and all that, and they told me like the atmosphere was just really tense, like still electric, but really really tense, and you could definitely feel that. It's kind of like the same thing against Chicago. The first period was just electric, because of Demidov, but then it was so quiet, like the tension was just crazy, right? Like you could feel it. So I think last night's game was kind of all that. Even when Montreal went up 3-1, you could still feel like the fan base was not comfortable yet. And with good reason, right? Because there's so much on the line. So I think, Montreal came out, they had a good first period, like a bit of a bad break on the Carolina goal, with it bouncing off Goule's shin pad and everything. And in the past, you see Montreal kind of destabilize maybe a little bit in game. And Martin St. Louis talked about this all year, about the ability to kind of adapt or kind of like refocus mid game. Like that's so important, especially in the playoffs, guys. So important not to allow momentum to turn completely. There's going to be times in a game where momentum swings. So how can you swing the momentum back? And in the last several games, what we've seen a lot is Montreal's power play, or sorry, penalty kill has been really important at regaining momentum. Unfortunately, the power play still an issue. Still, it's kind of the opposite. It's like sapping momentum away from the team at key parts. So I think it's going to be nice for Montreal to have some time to work that here leading up to the first round. But overall, guys, like I think Montreal just played to me, when Montreal is at their best is when St. Louis is able to roll those four lines, which he was able to again because Heineman was there. The Evans line, had a lot of ozone time. They didn't create a lot of offense. Heineman hit a post and everything, but just ozone time, not in your zone. So that's the important thing. If you're not in your zone, even if you're just cycling back there, then that's really good news. So rolling four lines, and ultimately having good specialty teams, right, and playing a smart way. So for the most part, there was just really that part in the second period where they kind of like lost a little bit of control, but that's when Montembeault kind of was really strong and was able to kind of hold them in there until they were able to get that really key play. Really great board battle win by Slavkovsky, keeping the puck alive. And then I think it was Carrier that made the really nice cross crease or cross ice pass to Suzuki to take the lead. And from there, our comfort level was pretty good, right? So overall, like like I said, like my wife and I were watching the game, and even my wife, like she watches the games with me and everything, but even she was feeling the tension, right? Like so it's a pleasure and it's a privilege to feel that kind of pressure. So one thing Montreal showed us all year is that they are a resilient team. And I was saying, like, they play their best when they roll four lines. They also play their best when they're patient. And I think last night that was the difference with the Chicago game. They were forcing things through. They're playing a little bit of run and gun. And that's kind of where they lost their center of gravity a little bit. So good patience, made it all the way through, and I was very relieved when Evans potted that empty netter goal. But very very exciting, Coach. I haven't watched your game call yet, but I'm going to probably go back and watch your your reaction when Evans scored that goal. I'm sure it was a good one. I did come in after the game was over, and I saw you were wearing your helmet. So I'm
Yeah,
assuming you must have been pretty excited. Whenever Frank, I don't know if you've ever seen Coach with the helmet, but he has like a Jaffa kind of helmet there. So when the helmet comes out, the excitement level is up. So I'll have to go back and watch that.
exactly.
Bleu, blanc, rouge, le Canadien, c'est dans notre sang, dans nos cœurs, notre tradition, notre honneur. Le Canadien, c'est tout, c'est une partie de nous. Bleu, blanc, rouge, le Canadien, c'est une partie de nous.
Oh,
All right.
that's happening.
Absolute banger.
It is, yeah.
Here we go. We have
It
to
is.
move on and we're going to go to stood out players of the game yesterday. Marco, you're going to start with that. Stood out, obscure, and at the office. And we go from there.
Well, I'll try to not steal like Frank. Feel free to copy me because some of these are pretty obvious, but for sure it's got to be Kaiden Guhle, right? Like, Kaiden Guhle. What's interesting about Kaiden Guhle, guys, is I was watching the body language, of all the players when they were either after the Chicago game or leading up, like the press conference before the game. And to me, Kaiden Guhle seemed like a bit nervous, more, and I'm not going to say rattled, right? But like he looked, I don't know. It was just to me like he seemed like to be one of the ones that was the most affected by, and Caulfield too. Caulfield was really, you could tell he was really pissed after the Chicago game. So to me, that says a lot about Guhle, right? Like what I interpreted as him being a bit stressed, I think was just anger and like just eagerness to get out there. He probably felt bad about, I love that hit that he gave. Unfortunately, I think it did turn the game a little bit. The penalty that he took with that big hit in Chicago. So maybe he felt a little bit guilty, but I think like again, clutch, like you said, Frank, like really, really nice shots. Really, really good. Kind of like awareness to kind of be where, like, it's not just a shot, it's being in the right place to get that pass to be available for that shot, right? So just really strong overall game by Guhle. And so to me, for sure, he would be the guy that stood out. For me, obscure, again, and I mentioned him off the top here about how maybe we don't talk about him that much since the Four Nations. For me, it's Montembeault. Like, without Montembeault, especially in that part in the second period, I think it could be a very different game, right? So the calmness and, like not giving up a lot of rebounds, got a little bit crazy there when it's 3-2. There's a couple of rebounds that scared me. But in that part in the second period where Carolina was really carrying the play, I think it really stabilized things. So to me, not a lot of people were talking about him after the game. So he would be my obscure. Not too many guys I would bring into the office to shit on them or anything. I guess I would bring maybe Demidov into the office just to make sure that he understands why he only played 10 minutes last night, right? Like, just so that you have that conversation with him, right? So, again, like I think he had a good game. Couple of really nice. There was that really nice move that he made one-on-one and got in on the goalie and just kind of missed upstairs. And there's a couple other nice plays too. But I don't think he played bad. It's just like on the power play too. Like I just feel he didn't have like a lot of touches, right? Like just the puck just didn't get near him in certain situations. Like he just didn't have a lot of opportunities and he didn't get a lot of minutes. So I would just have Sandy Wee talk to him in the office, tell him, listen, kid, you're going to be a huge part of what we do here in the playoffs. It's going to be great having a couple of days to really kind of teach him just some core things, especially in the defensive zone, kind of how they work. But I wouldn't really have anybody in the office to. I think overall everybody kind of did their part. So that would be my choices, guys. What about you, Frank?
Yeah, excellent choices, thoroughly. But I'll go with different ones. So I think
Sure.
I see it in the chat. Slavkovsky had a fantastic game, but for me, that stood out. I'll go with Suzuki. He's been solid all year. Realistically, he carried this team, especially since the Four Nations, especially right before the deadline. But yet again, yesterday, double shifted, play some with some other lines. He carried his line as well, carried the power play. He was fantastic yesterday again. But on top of that, the cherry on top for me is cracking the 30 goal mark. and
Yeah.
finishing. As we stand today, he's tied for 12th in the league in points, not among centermen, amongst all players.
All players.
This
Yeah.
season, this season, Suzuki is a top 15 player in the league. This is
Can I say this?
fantastic.
It is, man. So one thing just on Suzuki that, because I was watching a show earlier and like, I think it was on TSN, and some of the guys are saying, like some people compare him to, Patrice Bergeron. I'm not sure he's really there. Just for fun, guys, go look at Patrice Bergeron's production in his career. Do you know what the highest point total Patrice Bergeron ever had in the NHL? 79
I don't know
points.
that he, yeah, I don't know that he
79.
broke the point per game ever. Yeah.
No, he never did. Well, sorry, he did point per game, but it's because he missed a whole bunch of games. Like he got 79
Right.
points one season in like 70 games or something like that, or 69
Right.
games. So he was at a point per game, but the highest point total he ever had in his entire career, 79 points. So I know, you could say Patrice Bergeron was a superior defensive player, but Suzuki's getting there. And, it has a lot to do with how well the team plays. It's not just one guy that can be good defensively, right? So beware. Like I think we might have a Selke in Suzuki's future if things continue that way. Sorry to interrupt, Frank, but I was just looking at those numbers and I thought it was important to kind of lay it out there.
No, absolutely. And I'll add too, like I think it also closes the debate on whether or not he's a first line centerman.
Yeah.
I think
Oh, yeah.
he legitimately is, and he's still quite young. He's not 30 years old. He's entering his prime as we speak. So
Exactly.
I think there's more to come, and we're going to be thrilled to have him. And as a leader too, like he wears the C with pride. Like he carried this team into the playoffs. He really pushed the pace for everyone. So yeah, I'm absolutely thrilled, not just for yesterday, but for a season as a whole. I'll go quickly over the obscure because I said it before. So Heineman to me was my obscure one. He really stood out in my opinion. His best game since he came back, and it was very, he's a bit more physical, a bit more aggressive. Played well with and without the puck. Lots of positive things happened when he was on the ice. May not translate it into goals, but he was a positive factor. So great game to build upon. And for the at the office, I agree with you. I don't know that anyone stood out in an awful way. I'll just say, and I think I just saw a comment as I'm about to say it right now, but it's been a few games that I feel like Hudson has been run over a little bit. Yesterday, I believe it was Alexandre Carrier or William Carrier, sorry, who run him like completely. And it's happened in the past few games, so maybe a little bit fatigue there. So I think having a couple of days off could be beneficial before we enter the playoffs for him to sort of, make sure that it's not a wall that he's hit. He's not as slippery, or that he can be a little bit more effective in trying to sweep away from the hits. When you have the puck this much, it's bound to happen. I get that, but when you're that big, or should I say, when you're that small, you got to be worried. You got to be worried when you see him being trampled a little bit.
Well,
so
one thing that's going to be interesting. One thing that's going to be interesting to kind of monitor is Quinn Hughes, right? Like, is it going to be the Quinn Hughes effect, right? Quinn Hughes was obviously we know what he's done in the regular season, but he's really struggled to be as effective in the playoffs, right? So, listen, I've learned that you never bet against Lane Hudson, and he's defied all odds and, every step of the way here. But it's going to be something to watch, right? Especially against Washington that plays really, really heavy. You have some really nasty players on that team. So, but I did notice that, Frank. That's a really good catch by you. Like he did get, for 2 games in a row there, he got dinged pretty good. So, and Suzuki too. Suzuki got dinged pretty good in the last couple games too. So good timing for those days off.
He did a very good choice, stood out. I cannot go over what you just said. Sakowski have a really good game. Only the last 2 periods. First period, I was not very happy about him. But the first one was not very good the first period. There was not create a lot of possibilities. Suzuki struggled first period too. But Sakowski bounced back very well second, third period. He wasn't involved with the 3 first goal. The Toronto tied the game with 1 second to go, eliminate 3-3, by the way. Obscure. I know it would be a little bit crazy said that, but I think the impact or the effect of Emil and Eman make Jake Eman better, I believe, during that game. That line, I think that line struggled for the last 10 games overall. I think make that impact for the Montreal Canadiens. And he is like, for me, the lucky charm for the Montreal Amen and Amen too. So I think for me, this is one I would like to see on the obscure. At the office, it was my pick, Frank Leinartson. Leinartson need to figure out now. Um, it would be really interesting what he's going to do in the playoff. Remember, guys, Quinn Hughes last year, first round, he's struggling um, about the physicality of the game return that. So the last couple of game he's struggling, and I know maybe we will talk about this a bit later, but I'm not sure it's a benefit for him now to play on the right side versus the left side. Uh, this is something I will really, really pay attention for that. Maybe at the end of the season, but next season, I think for me, they would have to put him on the left side with Madison, ACV stay there, and a goalie. And then they will have to figure out what he's going to do with Jekai is trouble. But if it was me, it's something I would prefer him to play on his side.
You hope that Reinbacher's ready to go here next year, Coach. I think we all envision that's the pairing, right? I know everybody loves Guhle and Hudson together, and I personally like Struble and Hudson. Probably I like that match better, but you could tell as soon as Guhle was ready to play, they moved off Struble right away. Even though I think they were playing really well together, but it is what it is. They really like Guhle and Hudson together, but you know how I feel about that, Coach. I don't like players playing on their offside. If and Hudson, to me, out of all the left hand shots they have, he's probably the one that can probably be the best at it because he's so agile. And that we all know why it's hard to play on your wrong side is because when you're doing puck retrievals, then you always have to kind of like turn your back at some point, right? To be on your right side. And that's where you make yourself vulnerable. And we saw what happened with Guhle, like how many times he got smushed, and he's a bigger guy. So I think ideally for sure, like we know Hudson pretty much goes everywhere. He's kind of like a rover. But when it comes to those puck retrievals, it would be a lot better for him to be there. So I agree with you. We can talk about this off season, but I think Montreal might need to go out. Like if Reinbacher is not ready, you need to maybe escalate things a little bit, and you go get like Frank, you were mentioning Dobson earlier, like a right hand defenseman
But they
that can
need to
come in
get
and
one. They have to get one.
yeah,
They have to get someone to take the spot of David
Savard.
Savard. So
Yeah,
we'll be interested about that. I think the shootout, I was going to go with Martin St. Louis, but that's another subject for
yeah,
another time. I'll try
yeah.
to get in by number, guys. Marco, how I like to make number, how I compare that. And you'll be really interesting what happening for the number for the Montreal Canadiens. So let's see the by number for the Montreal. And I classify this with three different categories. And here's what's happening. Last season, Montreal had 30 wins. This year, they are 40 wins. They are plus 10 win this season for the Montreal Canadiens. The goal for 232. They have only 243 overall, only plus 11. We talk about an average of 30 goals this season, plus for the Montreal. Did not go there. Goal again, they dropped a 20 goal this season, 281 to 261. So if you calculate this, it's approximately a plus 31 overall with the goal for and the goal again. Not bad, but it's not great because the goal differential at the end it was minus 20 if I can record it properly. The power play
Yeah.
increasing of 2.8 overall for the Montreal Canadiens. The PK, the power play goal, they only score guys only plus 3 goals this season compared to last season. That's pretty good. The 20.3% guys, this is the first time since 2018, I believe, or 17, they passed the the 20% for a team for Montreal Canadiens. It was Kirk Muller was the coach for the power play. The PK guy, this is really great. The PK increasing at plus 4.9. And obviously for the 5 versus 5, it's not looking good. It's minus 3. This is a stat you want to get better if you want to be a better team in NHL. So when you see those numbers, Marco, before Frank, what tell you that overall?
Well, I think Liney wasn't there at the start of the season, and the power play is struggling now. So if you're the half glass kind of full kind of guy, you look at the good part where Liney was on fire and the power play was clicking, and you say, wow, it was clicking very much higher than that because the first part of the season and the last part of the season the power play is garbage. So that means that at some point they were doing something really, really, really good to get that overall average. So I'm looking at this particularly because I think that's one area where there's assets that you can use and place a little bit differently to make it better tomorrow if you need, right? They have the assets right now. They have Davidov now. I understand he's got only 2 games in his back pocket. They're not going to put him on the first power play on day one. But I think if you drop 1 or 2 in the playoffs and your power play is useless, you might be looking at shuffling things up. And he could be a very potent weapon to add there, which would push someone down to the second power play, uh, making it better. So there's all of that into place that could be interesting. Um, I personally would love to see Davidov there, probably in Caulfield's spot right now. And I would even argue that you could probably drop Slavkovsky as well and have someone like Heineman or Anderson being in front of the goalie on that first power play to better use Slavkovsky as more like a shooter on the second power play. So there is ways that you can shuffle this special teams unit to make it really potent. I'm just curious to see whether or not they try to do that as the playoffs run around. So that's going to be interesting to see. But yeah, the 5-on-5 as well. You look at the numbers, like how did 5-on-5 goals totals from last year were better than this year, yet we're making the playoffs. So this is very, very much a question mark for me. How did that happen? So something's got to give. I think a lot of people are bang on in the chat there. We need a 2C. That's absolutely true. That second line with Liney and U-Hook for a while was pretty much invisible. So Davidov's now here. Likely this is something they're going to address in the off season. So probably next year they're going to have a legitimate second line that can get you those 5-on-5 goals.
So what I find interesting, Coach, looking at this is, and by the way, like great, thanks for putting these numbers together. It would be cool for us to go back. Remember the shows that we did where we were kind of trying to project how many goals Montreal would have to score with, like, it would be fun to go back and see kind of what if our predictions or prognostication was close. But, one thing would be interesting for me to see, Coach, here is because really Montreal's a different team since November, right? Like, if you look at Hudson, for example, right? Like he ended up, I think, like at -2, but he was like at -20 at some point, right? So I think like it would be interesting to just like almost eliminate the first 2 months of the season where Montreal had a terrible training camp. Everything was kind of discombobulated and everything wasn't really working really well. To me, anything past say like December 1st is kind of like the new Montreal Canadiens, right? Like the Montreal Canadiens that we hope we're going to see moving forward. So I'd be curious to see if we looked at what Montreal's numbers were from say December onward, what that projects like to be over 82 games and what that would look like. Because what's ironic, guys, is so I think, Coach, you're right. I think the goal differential, we ended around -20. And I think the only other team last year that made the playoffs with a negative goal differential was the Washington Capitals, right? So it's kind of ironic that we end up meeting them in the first round. But to me, that -20 is a little bit misleading. Like if you project that over, if you take away those first couple months where they weren't playing, they hadn't really grasped the way that they wanted to play yet and everything before Carrier showed up and added a little bit more balance to their decor and all that. Montreal's a very different team now. So I think, the power play, there was times of the year here where it was flirting with a little bit better, percentage. But I think, obviously they're relying a little bit more, too much on Laine's shot here. I feel like they're really slow moving the puck. Like I think they just really need to snap the puck around a lot more fast. Like, to me, that's the key to any power play, is just good puck movement. And I find they're really slow and deliberate with what they're doing. So I think that will be good. To me, the PK is kind of like the Jacques Beauchamp Award winner in terms of what they did this year. Like, the unappreciated kind of aspect of their play was the penalty kill. Like I was mentioning earlier, they absolutely fed off that sometimes. Really big momentum swings with their PK, key shorthanded goals. Really nice turnaround, good units. Like, we saw almost no turnover all year with their PK units. Anderson, Dvorak, Evans, Armia, Suzuki jumping in here and there. Matheson, after Hudson started getting PP1, Matheson was almost exclusively playing PK and playing like a lot of minutes there. So listen, like, these are interesting numbers. The key one though, coach, plus 10 wins. That's the key one, right? So that's the big one. All the other stuff, like the 5-on-5. I know Patrick LeWhite talks about this a lot, like that some of the special units maybe have masked a little bit the fact that Montreal actually is a little bit almost flat when it comes 5-on-5 year over year. So I think it's something they need to continue to work on if they're going to have success against Washington. They're going to have to, there's not a lot of specialty teams in the playoffs, guys. So lots of 5-on-5 play. So Montreal is going to need to be really, really strong 5-on-5 if they want to have any chance against Washington.
Well, I will add too. I agree with you that they're not going to get as many power play chances as in the regular season. But if the 2010 run against Washington, mind you, has taught me anything, is that if you have a Marc-André Bergeron or a Camilleri that can win you games on the back of a power play goal, a timely one, it would be a very good time for it to click, I will say.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Sound good. It was a good exercise to know a little bit more about the Montreal Canadiens. I'm going to go a little bit more deeper. We still have a couple of minutes to go together. We talk about Kaiden Guhle impact during the game yesterday. Overall, do he become the best defenseman for the Montreal Canadiens? What do you think would be his impact for the playoff against the Capitals, Washington, Marco?
Well, I think you can make the argument that he's certainly Montreal's best two-way defenseman, right? Like, and has the potential to be, a very good shutdown defenseman in the NHL, like a top four shutdown defenseman. I'm with Frank. I don't see enough offense in his game for him to reach that stratosphere of being like a top pairing elite, top pairing defenseman. But that's not to say like he's still not valuable, right? Like, he's still going to be super valuable. His leadership, he's a gamer. He's a great leader as well too. Looks like he's got all the makings of a really good leader, right? So last night he had a tremendous impact. Like I said, I was a little bit nervous seeing his reaction before the game, but I totally misread it. Like, he was ready for the game and came through in the clutch, right? So to me, I guess the big question, and these are, I'm focused more on the playoffs right now and what we're going to do in the playoffs. But, it really puts into question what happens next year, right? With Matheson and how, Jack Eye's sitting right now, right? And we all realize Jack Eye needs to play and he needs to continue to develop. And I think everybody agrees that he's a really important part of the team. He brings something so unique. But right now there's just a ménage à four, which is even sexier than a ménage à trois in my experience. Anyways, I wish I had that experience. But so yeah, we'll have to see what happens there. I guess the key thing for Kaiden Guhle, guys, and by the way, I keep seeing this, all the different podcasts, all the different talking heads are saying, well, one big disadvantage for Montreal here is they're inexperienced, they're a young team. I get it. There's a lot of young players, and that's true. And Guhle is one of those guys. Guhle does not have any NHL playoff experience, but Montreal does have a decent amount of, I think people forget that Suzuki and Caulfield just went to a Stanley Cup final not long ago, right? And nobody talks about that. Nobody seems to remember that just because it happened during COVID. There's that huge asterisk next to it. But at the end of the day, they do have that experience. And on the back end, like Matheson has some playoff experience. Savard obviously has the cup. So that to me, but that's one of the biggest questions, coach, is the inexperience on the blue line. Is because up front, yes, there's some young players, but we have a lot of good veteran presence all throughout the lineup up front. So really, Kaiden Guhle, he's the number one question mark there in terms of how quickly is he going to be able to adapt to the pressure cooker, which is the playoffs. If I had to guess, I think he's going to be good. I think he's a gamer. I think he's built for the playoffs. He's hungry. He wants to prove this is the time of year that you want to showcase that you are a real hockey player. So I expect that Guhle will have an impact, but along with all the other young D-men in Montreal, that's going to be a really, really big question mark.
Yeah, well, he plays with an edge, right? And in the playoffs, this is the kind of guy that can really swing momentum with a timely hit or a timely, fight or check or whatever. So the key to me for Guhle is staying healthy. Obviously, this is something so far it's been, his career has been riddled with that a little bit. So, akin to a Doc or a Reinbacher, these are key players of the Montreal rebuild, but they have to stay healthy to be that important piece. So that's going to be a very important factor for him to be successful in this playoffs.
Sound good. About that one, we're going to move now from Nick Suzuki by number. Nick Suzuki have a great game, but we're going to see what's happening here, Mr. Marco with Frank.
Ça va bien, Montréal!
Nick Suzuki, it's rare he celebrate after a goal.
That's so cool. I've never seen Suzuki like that. I think it's probably the most emotion you've ever seen from him. It makes me smile seeing that. I was so happy for him. So happy for him.
I was just want to compare his number, and then you can talk a bit more about his impact. 30 goals, 59 assists, 89 points. Only 4 center is in front of him. Jack Eichel, Connor McDavid, Leon Tresadol, and Nate McKinnon. But now we have to add Sidney Crosby. He has 91 points tonight, so he's going to add that one. But you have only 3 players in NHL have more assists and combined assists with goal together as Nikita Kucherov, Nathan McKinnon, and David Pastrnak. So you have a player maybe have more assists but less goal as Suzuki. It could be like 96 points, by the way. But both categories, only 3 players beat Nick Suzuki. So great from Nick Suzuki. So my question to you is about how we consider him a top 10 center number 1 in NHL. Secondly, do you give him the MVP of the season for the Montreal Canadiens? So I don't know who is starting now, so you can pick. We just want to start talking about Nick Suzuki. That'd be good.
Go ahead, Frank. Go ahead.
Sure. Well, we did talk about this a little bit earlier, but yeah, I think it's now, for sure a top 15 centerman in the NHL. Is it a top 10? I'll have to see because it's really the first year that he's in that points conversation. So I think he's there, but I it could be debatable. But I think he's if not top 10, very close to it. So that for me closes the debate whether or not he's a legitimate first centerman. He is. There's no doubt in my mind in that regards. And yes, he's definitely the MVP. As much as Hudson's had an impact on this team, like his impact is undeniable. He really changed the team, from the get-go, realistically. But I think, the heart and soul, the guy that was there, the guy that carried the first line, this was a one-line team for, at least half of the season, right? So this is because of Nick Suzuki, who's been double shifted, who plays now the full 2 minutes on the power play, who kills penalties at times, who he's really played in all situations. So to me, he is for sure hands down the MVP of this season.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how much value there is in trying to. It's so fluid, right, and so subjective to rank top 10 or whatever. It can change year to year. So ultimately, though, I think the big thing, is he a number one center? The answer is yes, right? Like, I think ultimately that's what the question is. So, I don't know how he compares to other players, or, that might fluctuate year to year, like you said, Frank. So, we talked a lot about Suzuki. Again, to me, it was kind of like neck and neck all year in terms of whether Suzuki or Hudson would be the MVP of. And I don't know, it's a hard one, right? Because Hudson impacts the game a lot as well too, right? Like, this year, and I'm not sure where Montreal is without Hudson this year. If you're looking at kind of who can change the game at any given time and turn the game when you really need to be honest, just as a fan watching the game, if Montreal's not playing well, or I find like things are sluggish, I tend to kind of like wait, and I'm like eager for Hudson to get on the ice because I know he's going to make something happen, right? So, but I know that's not the like I know that's a really easy one, and it's the flashiest one. So maybe that's why fans tend to kind of view it that way. But to me, it's neck and neck, right? Like, you can make a case for either Suzuki or Hudson. And to me, so if I had to rank, I'd say it's like a tie between Hudson and Suzuki for number one in terms of MVP. And I will say, like I've said it a couple times, you can't discount Montembeault in terms of his impact on the season either. So those would be my top three, like, most important players for Montreal this year would be Suzuki, Hudson, in whichever order you want on any given day, and Montembeault.
Sound good. We pass to Nick Suzuki. Yes, Nick Suzuki is honestly, in my opinion, um, proof now is a center number one in NHL. I would put him now on the top 12 in NHL, also, on my opinion. And we'll see. And I will give him the MVP. Whatsoever Lennartson had accomplished, um, Nick Ski, you know, he is on overtime. He have 6 game winning goal, I believe, this season. I think he carry on the team on his shoulder as of the first line, helping Caulfield left, Sarkeski. He's a captain, he's a leader, and he carry on the pressure from Montreal Canadiens constantly. He did not miss any game in the last, 5 years, 6 years now?
Well, he's never missed a game in his career,
Yeah.
period.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think
Yeah.
for me, I would give a little bit edge over Lennartson. Now, Lennartson create a lot of great things for the Montreal Canadiens, honestly, but I think the captain deserved that one. Talking about this man, Lennartson is getting hit right now. We're going to talk about the shoulder return, maybe return for LHD. So we talk about him, so I don't want to go deeper about that, but I'm going to change the question for both of you, and we'll see what will be your answer. Do you dress Aberjakai at the first game against the Capitals? Marco.
Well, good timing. We're having a good chat with Morgan here in the chat about, and to be clear, like, if Morgan, if you've watched the show in the last while, like, I think, like, and I mentioned earlier, I think Struble was playing super well with Hudson, and it's hard to you can't really make an argument for Jacky not being in the lineup over Struble right now. I know some people might make that argument, but I understand why he's not in the lineup right now. Because Struble, you just couldn't take him out. He's given you zero reason. Like Saint Louis has talked about in the last while, like, he took advantage of the opportunity that came along when Guhle got injured. It was the first time that he had, I think what Saint Louis said is he had like an extended runway to really establish himself, and he took full advantage. So it's just zero, reason why to take him out. So really, and then so it brings you to the argument of like, okay, well, Savard is having problems moving around out there, and I get it. I see it when he's going back for pucks. Like, it's laborious to say the least. But name me a guy that's smarter, kind of on the ice right now on the back end for the Montreal Canadiens, like in terms of knowing where to position himself, knowing when to kind of like eat plays, eat pucks along the boards, and that's not even to mention like his shot blocking, like, mastery, right? Like, so like I was just having that chat with Morgan, right? Like, there's no question that Jacky brings a je ne sais quoi that nobody else on the back end can bring, for Montreal. Like, he brings that that nuclear deterrent, if you want, so to speak, right? Especially when Tom Wilson's going to be on the other side. You have McElwraith, you have like Duhaime, some really heavy players. So if I'm Martin Saint Louis, like we saw that Josh Anderson can handle Tom Wilson not too bad, right? We've seen that take place before. So I would probably start with, kind of who got you there. Like you bring the girl that, that you went with to the dance, and I screwed up that analogy, but you know what I mean? So I think you go in with kind of the back end that we've had over the last little while. And if you feel like you need to inject that into the lineup, I just don't see how you can take Savard out unless he becomes less effective than he is now. Like, let's say he really can't move around and provide you what he's providing right now. Like, to me, again, like the PK is such an important part of it's a really critical part of Montreal's identity. And Savard is a key part of that. Not to mention all the intangible things he does, having him on the bench, being like that assistant D coach to Robidas, basically unofficially, is what he is on the bench. So I find it hard to see a scenario where you can bring him in the first game here, but you always have that option. And then last thing I would say is he hasn't played in a while, guys, right? So you're just going to reinsert him back in there. Like, I think it's kind of like a break glass in case of emergency kind of thing that you would have to do now.
So Frank.
Yeah, I think you're bang on regarding that. I forget what the original question is, but I'll go on your tangent here on Jacky here. But I feel like
his question was should Jacky should he be back in the lineup? Yeah,
gotcha. Well, to your point, like I think Struble and Hudson were a fantastic pairing, so most likely they will resort to that. Depending on how thing goes, but you're right about Savard too. Like he's a Stanley Cup winner for one. That's I believe the only one in the team, if I'm not mistaken. And also, like, as slow as he has been, like people forget. But when I see him right now, like basically like stumbling into the playoffs, it reminds me so much of Hal Gill, how useless or barely useful he was in the regular season, and he became a god in the playoffs because he was doing the octopus in front of the net. And I can truly anticipate Savard like barely crossing the blue line, just staying back as much as he can so he doesn't have to skate back too fast, and like just lay in front of the net for the whole playoff series and will be loved for it. So I'm thoroughly willing to give him a chance. Prove me wrong. And if you do, I'll have a great replacement in Jacky, especially if as everyone said, if things get a little bit dicey and out of hand. But I think Savard has his value and will play a very useful role.
Nope.
Good point, both of you, about that. I expect to see Jacky in the series. It could be game number 2, game number 3. But I will not change anything. It's just, I think they win the last game. I will keep the same lineup. And I will go from the first game and see they are going to be, Reg Simmons. I could tell you the same thing. Maybe you're going to see Tobes at some point. If Montembeau is struggling.
Let's hope not. If we get to that stage, then we're not in good shape. But let's hope not.
So we'll see about the next one. We're going to go to next game review. I want to give you that one preview. Montreal Canadiens versus the Washington Capitals. What do you expect about this? So we're going to give you a bit more information there. Washington 111 point, big bodies. We talk about a lot of big bodies like 6'2", 6'3". The defense is pretty good. They are very physical. Tom Wilson is one of them, but they also have the Duhaime at the 4 line. Macrois at the defenseman. The defense is better, like compared last year, Carlson, Chikron, who were really late about that. You have Sendon also there, TVR. And the forward, honestly, good year for Prodas. With them, 29 goals, I believe, with 30 goals. He's not yet ready. I don't know if he'll be a part of the first game, but honestly, Strom, Ovechkin, Pierre Dubois, McMichael, I can go all the way like that. So not easy test for the Montreal Canadiens. Montreal have 91 points. I think the goal differential is minus 21 or 20. And finally, they are the first youngest team in the NHL to reach the playoff at 25.9 years old. And finally, the first line, the Montreal Canadiens have a great year overall. Unfortunately, bottom, the second line, third line, fourth line, it's up and down. They need some depth for making maybe this possible. So I'm going to give you the open door for that. Your expectation, what you expect from that series, and I want to hear from you your prediction already for the Montreal Canadiens versus Washington Capitals. So let's go, Frank.
Whew. Predictions, eh? It's gonna be a very difficult battle. It's gonna be an uphill battle. But you know what? If there's one series where I could see the upsets, and it would be this one. So I'm gonna go with the Habs. I might look foolish, and they might lose in four, but I'm gonna go with the Habs just because I don't think Washington was hoping to get the Habs, nor Columbus. Like they're getting teams who are no pressure. They're up and coming, and there's lots of question marks, lots of X factors that could really surprise you with this team. So, for example, Demidov is now joining a second line. No one has a book on him. No one knows what he can do. Who knows what he pulls out of his hat, right? And I've seen it. I've seen like the setup plays that he does with New Hook get increasingly better. And I will just a parenthesis on that. I've always thought that New Hook is a centerman that plays like a winger. And when I see Demidov, I see a winger that plays like a centerman. So there's some really interesting wires that could cross here that could be so confusing for the other team that honestly, I wouldn't be surprised that they do damage in the playoffs. So there's no book on them. They could really, really mess things up for the Capitals. But I have to say, it's going to be an uphill battle. They are, I believe, coach, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they're the team that has scored the most goals at 5-on-5 this season in the league. They're a juggernaut. They're a solid. They don't need the power.
They're up there, but Columbus was number one in the league, I think, 5-on-5. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. So yeah, we'll see how it plays out. But yeah, I'm gonna go with Montreal on 7 here.
Wow. Well, Coach, I had during my lunch break today, I had a lot of fun just playing around with Chat GPT and kind of like I love kind of coming up with different fun things to screw around on AI. And so I ran a whole bunch of different scenarios, and Chat GPT now can kind of like scour the web for all kinds of resources and everything. So I went through and I did a pretty deep dive analysis on kind of this matchup, and it was pretty interesting. I texted it to you, Coach. I don't know if you saw any of the stuff I sent through, but it's pretty cool. Like so I guess in terms of matchup, you're right, Frank. It's going to be a tough matchup. The key things that Washington does, is they are pretty physical. They're a pretty stingy team defensively. Their goaltending has been really solid this year, but that's kind of fallen off over the last maybe 10 games with Thompson not being there, and Lindgren's kind of struggled a little bit, right? So their identity defensively has been around some pretty strong goaltending. So that could be a factor, right? Like if the goaltending is not there, then that could be a bit of an issue for them. And if you look at kind of the teams that Washington hasn't matched up well against this year, it's fast teams that can challenge their foot speed, right? So Montreal, if they're smart and they look at the tape, they're going to really focus on their transition game. I know St. Louis really likes to kind of talk about getting the puck deep and getting their forecheck, but really what it's going to come down to, guys, is this. Washington creates most of their offense. They're similar to Carolina, and they're also similar to I forget the other team, but basically what they love to do, and we've seen this against Montreal, is they'll bring a third guy high up in the zone and funnel pucks to the net. And then the other forwards, their bigger forwards, will go in front of the net, add traffic. They're going to go for tips. They're going to go for rebounds, and they're going to cause mayhem in front of the net. Okay. That is where they get most of their offense 5-on-5. They don't cycle the puck that much. They go low to high. They get a third guy. And, with Montreal's hybrid zone coverage, sometimes that's where they get confused, right? When a third guy comes up high, that's when Montreal's defensive zone system switches from a zone to a man on man. And sometimes that's where things can kind of get a little bit screwy in the zone. So that's what Montreal is going to have to be careful for, because Washington, that is their bread and butter, is doing that low to high play. And then usually it's Dylan Strome or like a Chikrin or a Carlson, really good at getting pucks through. Scotty Bowman was on the the eye test sick podcast talking about this very same thing. So it's weird. Chat GPT, AI thinks very, very similarly to Scotty Bowman, which I find totally cool. In some weird way, Scotty Bowman and Chat GPT gave me the same information, which blows my mind. So how that affects Montreal, guys, again, St. Louis is I'm assuming they're looking at all the tape right now. They're going to have to really be careful with their end zone coverage here when they're doing their switch ups, really choosing the right time to leave their zone coverage to do those like double teams to pressure the puck. The key thing Montreal is going to need to do is not spend a lot of time in their zone. Remember, I was talking about the Evans line spending a lot of time in the offensive zone. It's all going to be about making sure that you get pucks out as quickly as possible. Be careful of those low to high plays and battle hardcore in front of the net. Hope that Montembeault doesn't give up a lot of rebounds, and just have your head on a swivel so that they're not kind of getting those tip chances. But I guarantee you that those are the kind of goals that you're going to see. You're going to see point shots. Remember, like, I think Matheson is kind of our defenseman that struggles the most with that. Is he has a guy like covered, but he's not able to cover a stick, and they'll still get a tip like in the high slot. Those are the kind of goals. Like, remember my words, guys. Like, when you see the goals that Washington's going to score, you're going to see goals like that throughout the whole series. So to me, that's the key to the series. If Montreal can do that, I think it's a coin flip, right? Like, to me, the big concern for Washington is the goaltending. If that goes off the rails, and if Montreal can adapt to what Washington does in the offensive zone, I think up front, Montreal can very much compete with Washington. It's all going to be about the young decor. Can they be poised enough to get the puck out so they don't fall victim to Washington's heavier play in their D zone? So to me, it's going to be a close series, tough to call. So I think it's going to go long though. Like, I don't think it's going to be. Some people are saying, Washington's going to sweep Montreal. I don't see that unless we see the Montreal team that's played in the last, like a Chicago style game. But one thing that we've seen, guys, is after Montreal has a bit of a break, like after the four nations, and when they've had a little bit of a break, they usually tend to come out of the gate strong. So I'm hoping we see that again. So to me, I'm cautiously optimistic that Montreal has a pretty good chance here at making this a series. I'm not going to predict, though. It's too close to call for me.
You got to wet yourself a little bit there, Marco.
All right, okay, if I have to wet myself, I'll say with you. I'll say Montreal in 7. Because I'm a homer, so I'll say Montreal in 7. But it's going to be close.
It's funny. I'm sorry, Frank, but I just want to add one thing. What it would be the difference, Marco, if Frank the goal on the power play between both teams?
You're asking, so over the season, what the difference was, like how many power play goals they scored versus Montreal?
Yeah,
I say like I'll say Washington scored maybe like 10 more than Montreal.
Okay, Frank.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with something similar, but I say Ovi has more than half the Habs power play staff combined.
So it's fun, guys. Is only 4.
Okay.
Really?
It's pretty close, yeah.
So if you think about this, Ovechkin, maybe I didn't look, but Lane with 15 goals on power play, that's pretty good overall. And the power play percentage, I don't know if you have this here. I don't have this right now here. It's on my other side. But at the end of the day, of course, you cannot to be on the penalty box because the power play is pretty good.
Yeah, like I said, like the importance of power plays, because there's not many, right? Like, so there's not going to be a lot of power plays. The whistles kind of get put away, as we know, right? So, so you could argue it both ways, right? Like it's the power plays are less frequent, but it makes being efficient when you get those opportunities even more important, right? So you have to be clutch, and it's when you score those power play goals that are even more important, right? Like if you score a power play goal and you're already up 3-1, it's nice, right? But it's when you score, like that's why all these stats can be misleading, right? Like you can have an amazing kind of like percentage success rate on your power play, but it's really when you score power play goals is important, and when you kill a penalty at what kind of the part of the game that's important too, right? So it's going to
Yeah,
be interesting.
Franco, Frank, before you comments, where do you put Washington on the power play overall in the league? 10, 20, 26? What would be the ranking?
Well, if they only have 4 more goals than Montreal, they're not that crazy. Montreal was what? They were probably in the middle of the pack, you
21st,
would say, or
21st, 21.
21st. So they're probably going to be 15, middle of the pack, I would say then, if they only have 4 more goals.
I'll give you a not a A plus. They are 14.
Okay, there you go. So yeah, it's a little lower than I thought, to be honest. But
Yeah.
yeah, I was going to add, sorry, coach, before you went on with this. I was just going to say the other thing to note too in this matchup is it's going to be two young coaches
Yeah,
in the Jack Adams finalist ballot, perhaps even. So that's going to
yeah,
be interesting as well, right?
yeah. That'll be interesting to see. Like Carberry, I think he has a lot more experience as a coach overall. Like as a bench coach, right? But you can't in terms of like Stanley Cup experience, like St. Louis lived it all too, right? So it'll be interesting to see kind of who has the edge there, right? Like from a tactical perspective, Carberry probably has the edge, and over like the coaching staff overall, because again, you have to look at Montreal's coaching staff overall, right?
Super
Oh,
chat.
we're going to it after that, so you don't mind.
Okay, that's a really good point. I think it'll be a very fascinating matchup behind the bench as well too, right? Like Carberry, I have a lot of respect for him. Both like teams seem to like really be energized by their bench boss, right? Like the players love them, go through a wall for them. So I think it'll be an interesting kind of kind of like little mini battle behind the scenes to follow too, for sure.
Frank, you want to add something? Just give you an idea for what he said. Montreal Canadiens have 31 goals less at 5 versus 5.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah, I
that's
believe that.
that was yeah, that was, I think, to me, again, like we talked about it, but they were truly lacking like a legitimate second line the whole season. But now with the influx of Demidov, that could be the X factor that really topples this whole thing. Especially, as I said, if him and Newhook find that chemistry, which I felt was coming a little bit more, because their playing styles are very oddly complementary, I think. So it's going to be interesting to see if it creates sparks at the right time, because truly in the playoffs, that's all you need.
Would be very interesting what happening about that. I want to give you something like that. Very interesting, guys. Over 60% of the team in NHL are in the playoff in the last 3 seasons. 60% of the team are out of the playoff in the last 3 seasons. That's really interesting to see that. So you have a team, 60% are been in the playoff for the last 3 seasons, and you have a team are out of the playoff the last 3 seasons. And I'll give you a number right there, Marco. Team consecutive are in the playoff. Tampa Bay lead with 10, I believe, or 9. Toronto, Carolina, Colorado, Florida, and Edmonton. Florida, Edmonton are 5 straight a year. And out, Buffalo 14, Utah / Arizona 13, Detroit 8, Anaheim 7, and San Jose, Philadelphia 5 are out. So you can see, guys, where it's not easy to make the playoff for different team, and you can see how they're struggling. I think for the team on the out of the playoff, guys, two teams he pay my attention, Marco, is Utah and I think the Anaheim Ducks. I think there will be the two teams going to make that, and the Detroit to see them year after year is really not good for the Eiserman plan, honestly. And that's not made because you made the playoff, you are successful. You look about the top plane over there, and you have Colorado, Tampa Bay are the only one with Florida win the Stanley Cup. Toronto, Carolina, and Edmonton never win it during that caps of the 10 years. So um, this is what happening. So what do you see about Steve Eiserman, Marco, for the summer?
Oh man, like I said, like that's a whole we could do a whole series on Buffalo and Detroit, right? And like we were talking about, like right now, the NHL's in an interesting phase right now where some executives are re-examining the value or the I guess the is it a good idea to go do one of these big rebuilds, right? But so it's an interesting question. Like to me, like looking at those numbers, coach, what it tells me is that, and like, and Hughes has talked about this since he's got here, right? Is what you want to try to do is you want to try to build so that you're a perennial kind of like, contender, right? Like that you build a team that can just be self-sustaining over, many, many, many years. But I think it's hard. It's hard to make the playoffs. It's very, very hard. Steve Staios was in an interview after they clinched, and he was asked kind of like what he wanted his team to learn, and he's like, I just want them to realize like to how hard it is for them to make the playoffs. Like this is how hard it was to make it, right? And it is. So it's a 32 team league. Like I know a lot of us have been watching hockey for many, many years, but this is the new reality. It's 32 teams, only 16 teams get in unless they change the rules to have like play-ins and stuff like that. So it's hard. It's hard out there for a pimp, as they say, right? To be competitive and all that. So Frank's probably the only person that got that reference. So no, so to me, like how that plays with Detroit, coach, is they're similar to Montreal in the sense where some of their assets haven't really gotten to the NHL yet. So you have Sandin Pellikka that's just kind of signed on. And you have a couple of other kind of like players that are hopefully going. You have Nygaard. I always forget the second part of his name.
Brandstad
Nygaard. So they just signed. I think they're going to be in the AHL here. So they have some pieces that are still coming, but there's still something there. I think there's a lot to that team. It's goaltending, right? Like they have like 10 goaltenders on their roster this year. Like it's just crazy. Like you need to kind of like pick a pony and really kind of invest in your goaltending. Look at how that paid off for Ottawa this year, right? Like just, getting that right, getting the goaltending position right can really have a huge impact on your team. There's still some questions on the back end for Detroit. They have some really good pieces there, like with Sandin Pellikka. I think Sherratt's been pretty serviceable. I like Sherratt. Like, he'd be a guy that I wouldn't be mad Montreal having in their lineup for the playoffs. Like he can be really physical. So I don't hate a Sherratt on their back end, but getting Petrie off the books wouldn't be a terrible thing for them. So a little bit more work on the back end, and down the middle, Larkin's still a great player. You have Casper that really had a good second half. So I think there's some good things. Like I think next year, it's not going to be a slam dunk for Montreal to make the playoffs again. It's going to be the same kind of dogfight unless there's big changes. I don't know if we should. I don't know why we're even talking about next year. We're focused on the playoffs, but for Detroit,
You're the only one talk about this, Marco. Everybody talk about the game
look,
Monday.
you're asking me to talk about Detroit, like they're eliminated, right? But like it's for next year, it's going to be a dogfight. They're going to be there. It's going to be Columbus. It's going to be
definitely.
Ottawa. Yeah, it's going to be a dogfight.
The great example about that, guys, the Devils. The New Jersey Devils, 3 years ago, they
Yeah.
make it, then they drop after that. An injury at Nick Suzuki, whatever it is, could happening about that. We'll
Yeah.
see. One thing I forgot to mention to you guys is the October 31, Montreal playing the Canadiens play against the Washington Capitals. This is a game they lost 6-3. They gave 3 goals as on the third period. 2 of the 3 goals was about like 20 seconds. They got destroyed 18 shots versus 3. And the next day, before they travel to the Pittsburgh, they have a punishment practice by Martin St. Louis. But it's funny you think about this. I think from that night everything started changing for the Montreal Canadiens. It took them about 2-3 games before they start to play better, and then you can see at the end they could be, who they are. They are on the playoff, and they play against the Washington Capitals. So we'll be interesting. They played 3 games this season. Washington won the first 2 games, and the Montreal won the last game. I believe by the score 3-2. But it will be a
Overtime.
really good challenge about that. But now is the time for both of you to give us your prediction of the first round this year. So I'm going to start with Frank about that, and the people in the chat give don't put your prediction also in the chat. Preview Toronto, Ottawa for Frank.
I want both teams to lose. That's the best outcome for me. So no, I think honestly, I think the Leafs are gonna get this one. I think a guy like a Matthew Nyes is going to be a huge factor for them. They have better goaltending this year. They're a bit more deeper on the back end. I think it's not going to be an easy series for them. The Ottawa Senators are arguably a tough team to play against, and I don't know what the record is between those two teams this year, but it's always hardly fought. So I expect that it goes.
Ottawa swept Toronto
Really?
this year. Yeah.
That's so interesting. That's really interesting. But I believe it's going to go in at least 6. But I think Toronto's going to come out on top.
Marco?
I'm going to say Toronto as well here. Like, I think Ottawa is going to have a good series. Like, I think they're hungry to kind of get there. But I think Toronto is well built. Like, I think, their goaltending, like, I think Stolarz has been so good recently. So I think Toronto is built for success this year. I'm not sure how far long they'll get here, but I think it's gonna be close. But I'm gonna say Toronto, like in 6 or 7.
All right. Let's go with Marco this one. Tampa Bay versus Florida Panthers.
Yeah. So Florida is kind of like an interesting one, right? Because so many question marks about, like, we know that Kachuk's probably going to be back. And they've had a couple of injuries. We know Ekblad's going to miss the first couple games. So it's a bit of like a surprise bag, like you're not sure kind of what you're going to get there. But I'm going to side with kind of assuming that everything kind of falls in place for Florida. And especially now that Bjorkstrand, I think, is injured as well. Like, that was a big move for Tampa. Like, the big thing I didn't like about Tampa was their depth, right? Like, and so they went out, made some great moves to kind of add a little bit of depth. But now with Bjorkstrand probably out for another couple weeks, I'm going to go Florida with this one. But I think it's going to be a good series, right? Like, so I'm going to say probably like Florida in 6 or, like, again, it's going to be a long series, 6 or 7. You pick it, but I'm going to go Florida on this one.
Yeah, I'll go with Tampa on this one. Vazzy has been solid this year. He's had a tremendous year. And Kucherov, like, the more I look at Kucherov, as much as I hate the guy, he's like 1-2 Art Ross in Connor McDavid's prime. Like, he's that good. Like, he's good, and in the playoffs, he's just as good. Like, he doesn't disappear. He's won a Conn Smythe. Like, he's legit. So I think he's going to be. I think he's going to be on top of his game and carry this team as well. So, yeah, it's going to be hard to be. It's going to be a hard fought series as well. Like, that's what I kind of love about the playoff format. Like, as much as I prefer overall the 1 versus 8 seeds, it's always like, holy crap! Like, there's insane matchups every night. Like 2 games, 3 games a night where it's insane matchups, like for a month or for like almost a month, like in the playoffs when it starts. So it's super interesting. So this is going to be a really fun series, and I'm going to go with Tampa on 6 on that.
Frank, New Jersey, Carolina.
Oh, Coach, are you not making your prediction? You're just putting us out there?
I put in the chat, but I apologize. I go with Tampa Bay and 7, and I put Toronto in 6.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Frank, Devils.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Carolina. They're gonna miss Jack Hughes. They're gonna miss their top players there. There's a couple of injuries in New Jersey that are gonna hurt them. Carolina is, they kind of remind me of the San Jose Sharks of yesteryears. They're the team that has a lot of good pieces that always gets into the playoffs. I don't know like how many consecutive years they've been in the playoffs now, but it feels like they haven't missed in so long. But basically, I think they're going to win this round and then dip in the second round. So, yeah, I'm just going to go with Carolina on this one. I'll say in 5.
Yeah, a lot of people are really, really going aggressive here on Carolina for this one, and because New Jersey, like, didn't they essentially finished with the same points as Montreal, right? Like they've been stuck in the mud for the like they had 80, it seems like they've had 89 points for like a month, so they've been stuck kind of where they are, and after Hughes got hurt and lots of things have been kind of going wrong. But I don't know. Like I just think I look at the goaltending there, guys, and Markstrom. I think at any time could. I'm not a huge Markstrom fan, right? But like if you look at the goaltending, you have to give it to the edge to New Jersey. I like New Jersey's back end too. Like it's pretty strong, and so I think it would be closer than people think, right? And Carolina, like again, it's such a weird season for them. Like they go out and make this huge move, and then like so they end up with Stankoven, which I love, but you can't say that they're a better team than they were at the beginning of the year without Natchez and everything else. So offensively, it might be challenging, right? So I think this is closer than people think. I've heard people say sweep. Like I don't know about that. It's a new season, right? So I'm going to go out on a limb. I'm going to say New Jersey. I'm going to go with the goaltending on this one. I like Heischer. Meyer's been really hot. So I'm gonna go on a limb. I'm gonna say it's gonna be if New Jersey wins, it's gonna be long. So I'm gonna say like New Jersey in 7 games.
Carolina in 6. Marco. Marco, Edmonton Kings.
Yeah, so it's Groundhog Day. Bill Murray wakes up, he looks at his clock, and it's like, holy shit, Edmonton's playing the Los Angeles Kings again. So out of all the kind of like series, I'm like, okay, roll my eyes a little bit on this one, Frank. Like to your point about it's good to build rivalries and everything, but man, this is like 5 years in a row now, or 4 or 5 years in a row. So out of this one though, like Edmonton, I really didn't like their off season. I don't like kind of where things landed with them. Like I still can't just believe that they lost Holloway and Broberg and all that. Like I just don't think Edmonton is a better team than they were last year. And then you add kind of like some of the question marks around just their health over the last month with Draisaitl missing time, McDavid missing time. Kane, I guess, is going to be an option. They went out and they got who's the guy? I always forget the guy's name from Boston that they went and got.
Trent
Frederick. He's questionable. Skinner hasn't really played much. He's been injured. So just lots of question marks. LA has home ice advantage on this one. And LA is like an absolute juggernaut on home ice this year. Like they by far have the best, I think, home ice record in the NHL. So I think for the first time, we'll see Los Angeles finally break through against Edmonton. So I'm going to say on this one, I'm going to say Los Angeles in 6. Edmonton kind of crumbles.
Yeah, I'm with you on this one. Who's the goaltender for Edmonton?
Skinner, I guess.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
LA in 6. I cannot believe this was not addressed. Like they got into the finals sort of despite him. He had a good end of the playoffs to be perfectly fair, but like the first 2 rounds he was a pain for them, and they carried his carcass into the finals. Like I cannot believe they didn't address this. Insane. So yeah, LA, I think this is their year. They have momentum right now. They're hot. Quentin Byfield is going to be, I think he's going to be. It's his homecoming party this playoffs. I think he's going to be a beast for LA, and I'm going to go with the Kings in 6 as well.
So you take King and how many game?
6.
6.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, me too.
How old is McDavid now?
29.
So Draisaitl was drafted before him, 1 year before.
I think it's 28, but I could be wrong.
So this
Not
is
sure.
what, their 10th season with the both of them or something like that.
Yeah.
Insane that they've never
Yeah,
like
sorry,
they
yeah,
got close last year.
Yeah, he's
but
28.
McDavid's 28 years old. 28.
28, McDavid.
Cannot believe they haven't been able
Which
to
team do you
surround
take,
these guys.
Carolina or Devils, Frank?
I said Carolina. I did say in 5.
Okay.
I think it's. I'll put like a little asterisk. I say in 5 because I think if they take the first 2, New Jersey's just gonna pack their bags and forfeit the rest of the series. But Carolina doesn't have that killer instinct. That's what they've always been lacking. So it could very well be much longer. So I'm not gonna get too cocky. I'll still say 5, but it could very well be much longer, as Marco said.
Here we go, Frank. Colorado, Dallas.
I'm gonna go with Colorado on this one. Heiskanen being out and Robertson now being out really hurts. And I did like what the Colorado Avalanche did in the trade deadline. They did acquire some really useful pieces there. So yeah, I think it's going to be a hard fought series, but I think Colorado's going to win it this year.
Marco?
In 6.
6. So
Yeah,
far,
I'm
Frank,
with-
I don't know if it's positive for you or negative, how you see that. But all you pick are exactly like mine. So I just want to let you know that. So I don't know you said good about that, but every game with all the pick you the team, the game is different, but the pick are right now same way. So
Yeah,
Marco,
you wouldn't want to side with the person who just won our hockey pool, which was me, by the way. I side with Coach when it comes to that, probably. But for Colorado, I think I'm with you guys on this one. I haven't made my final kind of like brackets or anything, but I'm inching towards Colorado maybe being like my favorite to win the Stanley Cup this year. I absolutely. It's a weird science experiment, the Colorado Avalanche. I think it's a. So yeah, I'm going to say Colorado, especially with what's going on in Dallas. Ottinger, kind of. I like Ottinger, but like in the last, like he didn't have a super strong showing last year in the playoffs either. So that was already a bit of a question mark for me. So I'm going to say Colorado. I'm going to go with you guys on this one. I'm going to go like six games.
okay.
And they're getting Landeskog too, eh? If that's like the heart and the motivation that you get out of that, I'm sure it's going to be through the roof.
I agree.
Right now you're losing. You go, Marco, by 1 point.
What, this week?
Yeah.
No,
Just
I
kidding.
don't think so, man. I was winning by like 50 points. So
No, the reason
before-
I did not mention that because I think about that before the show. I said, "Oh, we have another night tonight." So,
well, if Steve G can get 50 points tomorrow, then I think I'll be in
it
danger.
was like 10 points before I start, but again, was before the game tonight. That's the reason I didn't mention about that. But I think about this early. So, St. Louis and Winnipeg, Marco.
Yeah. Oh my God. So I call this the Connor Hellebuck, like, on the east side. St. Louis is the surging team, that's has everything going for it. But they do have Hollowell that's not going to be playing, and he's been such a big piece of their success. So this is a tough one. Like, again, I think Winnipeg is a solid team, but again, like I love that they added Luke Shen. I think that's a good piece for them. I still don't love their back end though, to be honest. Like to me, it's just okay. And then, then you have the center, you have, it looks like didn't I always forget his name. Who's the guy that plays second center for them? Like the Russian guy, I always forget his name.
Torchenko, is it?
No. I'm talking for Winnipeg. For Winnipeg.
Oh, gotcha.
I'm sorry again.
Who's second line center for Winnipeg right now? The Russian guy. I always forget his name.
The Russian guy.
Yeah, isn't he Russian?
I'm
Oh
just
man,
blanking
so
on that.
the second line center for Winnipeg right now
Heller,
in the chat.
Well,
Freddie. I'm thinking about
Ah,
Nemestikov.
Nemeshnikov, thank you. Okay, so to me, that's the biggest hole right there. Right, is their center ice like Nemeshnikov as their second line center. Like Lowry is like they have one of the best third lines in hockey. You know, you could. But to me, if I'm Winnipeg, I'm playing Lowry in the second hole, maybe because it's hard to touch that third line though. But anyways, I have some question marks about Winnipeg. St. Louis, it seems like a team of destiny. I'm still gonna say like Winnipeg will get out of this one, but it's it's not gonna be easy. So I'm gonna say Winnipeg in 7 on this one, but it's gonna be tight.
yeah, I'm with you here. I think it's going to be tougher because they are such a wild card. This team, like they do carry the name well, right? They're very surprising. I think they're well coached too, right? So Boston threw away Montgomery, not knowing that they had one of the best coaches in the league, right? So didn't he win the Jack Adams like the year right before or something like that? Like it was a bit rash. It felt, and we see the effects right away. Like in St. Louis, as soon as he arrived, like they turned it around. So yeah, I'm really hating this matchup if I'm Winnipeg, but I think as for all the reasons you mentioned, like Hellebuck has been so questionable when the games were on the line that
Yeah,
I cannot believe with the season that he's had that this is not the year where he shuts down all of his critics. The same way like Ovechkin was getting the same critics before he won the cup, like you get to a certain point where it's starting to pile on and you have to like break through. I think
yeah,
this is the year for Hellebuck where he really has incredible playoffs. They might not win at all, but he's going to be one of the reason where they got far. I think they're going to go far this year.
I agree with Winnipeg and 7 for me.
I'm going to go with 6.
Preview Minnesota, Vegas, Frank.
Yeah, it's hard not to go with Vegas on this one. I think they're still one of the top teams in the league. Um, they've. I love how they build their team. Like it's so cutthroat, it's so harsh, but yet they find some success. They were bounced off pretty early last year by Dallas, if I recall correctly, who had a tremendous team. Let's face it, much better team than Minnesota this year. But I think Vegas going to have the edge here. Eichel, again, one of the top players in the league this year. I think it's going to carry on in the postseason. So, and Mark Scheifele, not Mark Stone, this is the first time in a long time where he's not rested getting into the playoffs. So we'll see how that plays out. But I think they're going to be the better team. I'm going to go with 5, just because I always say
wow,
6. So I'll go with 5.
wow. Yeah, like I think Vegas will win, but like I think now that Minnesota has Kaprizov back and they have Eriksson Ek back, that really adds a totally different dimension to their team for sure. So
And
I still think
and
Vegas,
Boyum, eh?
Bouillon, yeah,
Sorry.
like you should, yeah. How do you integrate that guy, right? Like it's hard. You have to kind of find a spot for him, right? But yeah, that's a big X factor for sure. Great point by you, Frank. So yeah, like I think Minnesota's like they're a hard team to play against, right? Like they just play the right way, super well coached team. So I just don't think at the end of the day they just don't have as much depth. Like Vegas doesn't have many holes at all. Like they're just a really hard team to play against, solid team. So if they're healthy, like to me, that those are the two teams in the West that I'm still debating: Colorado, Vegas. But for this round, I'll say Vegas in 6. It'll be a bit closer than Minnesota will grind out a couple wins.
Awesome. We did Montreal before that, right? Maybe the people in the chat didn't do it. If you want to add a Montreal Canadian in the chat, it'd be good. And I think, Marco, you won with Montreal and 7.
Yeah, you didn't give your prediction yet, but I'm still waiting for that. But yeah,
And
Vegas.
Frank, you won also in 7, right?
Yep.
So we all agree with that part over there. And that will conclude the show we got tonight. What a great night. We got Frank back in the house. But, Frank, we cannot leave you like this. We have to talk about the Montreal Canadiens. So let me see if we have this around here for the Montreal Canadiens. I think that will motivate you for the game Monday night, Mr. Frank. It's going to start the season playoff for the Montreal Canadiens. We'll see what we're going to do again, the Washington Capitals. Frank, it was a pleasure, a great honor to see you again. We miss you. Fans here in the chat, we miss you. And always a pleasure to work with you and Marco together. Marco, again, you did it again. I know Marco have to go because he's a
little doggy.
The little doggy have to get out, Frank, about that. And hopefully see you, both of you, at some point between a game between 2 or 3 or 4 at some point. So I can wait to see you, both of you. I wish you an amazing, great night and a great week. I'm going to finish the show. But we give you the last word for both of you to tell us a bit more what you expect for the Montreal Canadiens during the playoff, or what are you looking for the Montreal Canadiens overall. So we'll start with Frank.
Well, I whether they lose in 4 or they win in 7, it's just great playoff experience for a bunch of young guys that are going to have a chance to experience it, but also show a little bit what they're made of and build upon that. So I don't have high expectations, but I think it's going to be fun for everyone involved and for the fans as well, myself included. So looking forward to that. And I'll just add one more thing too. Something that hasn't been mentioned, but sometimes like the things really fall nicely into place. Montreal owns Calgary's first round pick, which is outside of the playoffs. So it's going to be a top 16 pick, which is great. And ironically, Calgary has more points in the season than Montreal. So it's funny how things shake up sometimes, but you got to think. Kent Hughes, man, that man looks like he's blessed. Like everything he does, everything he touches so far has been pretty successful. His success rate is pretty good. I'll hand it to him.
Leading Likovic. That's another subject for another time. Marco.
Yeah, so I see a couple people bring it up in the chat. So I just want to say I was actually chatting with Enertap last night after Montreal won. So he is dealing with a couple of family issues. He sends his love. And definitely we're, this season Enertop was a huge part of the show, obviously this season. So we send our thoughts to him, and he was a huge part of kind of what Coach does here every night. So I'll pass on the messages that I see here in the chat to him next time I chat with him. But Coach, what I'm looking for, I'll be very interested to kind of see kind of what we can see in the practices leading up to Game 1. But I'm with you, Frank. Like, just enjoy it, guys. Like, this is bonus playoff hockey that really nobody was expecting, or very few people other than Sebastien maybe in our chat was predicting Montreal is going to make the playoffs. Not a lot of people, but enjoy it. It's going to be great. Whatever happens, great experience for these young players. So let's enjoy it. It's still going to be stressful as hell. My cortisone levels are going to be spiking and everything else, but it's springtime. It's the playoffs. It's going to be freaking awesome. It's going to be so cool.
Good night, both of you. I will see you next time. Wish you an amazing, great evening. Thanks again to be a part of the show tonight. That's conclude the show tonight. Thank you, Frank and Marco, on that one. Here we go, guys. Let's conclude the show tonight. I apologize. We have a super chat by Larry Lavalley. 2-time tonight, guys. We want to thank Larry Lavalley for the super chat. So let's see the... He did it again. Larry Lavalley, ladies and gentlemen, with the super chat tonight. Thanks so much, Larry, to do that at the Hockey Nation Live show. And that's conclude, guys, another show at the Montreal Canadiens. We want to thank everybody in the chat. Moderator Ron with us tonight. We have a lot of people in the chat. Thanks for all the likes you did. We'll be back tomorrow night. Laval Rocket. No NHL. Coach does not stop. I have to work. I have to be here. I don't know what to do when I'm doing nothing. So let's see the Laval Rocket tomorrow night, 7 o'clock p.m. If something changes, I will let you know. But we expect that for tomorrow night. Until then, my friend, we have an amazing, great night, a sweet dream. And of course, we have a couple of days to watching Saturday we're going to do the bowl game of the playoff. For the next month, I'm going to be every game we can do all together and talking about hockey. What a great, great year for the Montreal Canadiens. We are blessed and we are really grateful to see Montreal Canadiens for the playoff. And was not expect this at the beginning of the season to see the Montreal Canadiens and the playoff, but hopefully we have a lot of people join us join the playoff for the Montreal Canadiens. Until then, my friend, be well, be healthy, find a way not only to dominate the U-Day, but find a way to dominate the first half of what? Someone said 2025. We want to thank RJ Calabro for his great work with us during the season as a news and update. And all of you guys been with us since the beginning. Believe in Montreal Canadiens. We'll see. Like someone said in the chat, like A2, I believe he said, this is only extra hockey for the Montreal Canadiens, extra bonus for the Montreal Canadiens. And we'll see what happening. They win or they lose. This is a great experience for the Montreal Canadiens young core, and that will pay off a long term. Until then, my friend, we have wish you an amazing, great night. I can't wait to see you next time. Until then, of course, I'm going to finish with that. The Hockey Nation, I showed the Ab Nation want to tell you one more thing, sir. We love you, friends. Good night, everybody. I can't wait to see you. I'm going to go water gun today. Water. Shoot people all day. And maybe at the end, I will pick up a cheese. Have a great night, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your night. I can wait to see you tomorrow night. And that last time we do here with a little bit more music over. It's not a big deal. Here we go. Booyah! Good night, everybody. See you tomorrow night.